Okay, I just started the recording and finally got my screen share running. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for being here today. I hope you were able to get to the link. I pasted the wrong one in a couple of times. So the third link that I pasted in is the one for the agenda that you should be able to open. So if you haven't already visited that page, please do and go ahead and sign in. And we have a few things on the agenda today. I thought we would start off with one that I believe Jennifer suggested as an agenda item. And I think you guys had talked about this in some of the QA calls. It's about the renaming the merge to subscribe option. And let me just go to that JIRA so we can see what that's about. That's the announcement feature in Sakai when you merge the announcements. There's a couple different ways to do it, and if you merge it within the tool versus like copying it over into a new site, the terminology there is merge as well. But when you merge it within the tool, you're actually really more subscribing to the announcements from the other site, because it doesn't allow you to change it within the destination site. You can only change it in the originating site. It's this option here. So we have a link here to the merge feature. So I just wanted to get some thoughts on that. If anybody had any feedback on that particular item.
Same terminology is used in the calendar as well, isn't it? Merge.
Yes.
And then it would get really confusing because calendars have already got subscribe in there. Two
that's
different
a good
sorts
point.
of subscribe.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think I'm pretty sure there was somewhere else with merge, because when we did change the labels for the umpteenth time on the calendar, we specifically chose merge because it was used in announcements, but I thought it was used somewhere else, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, let me I'll go into, oops, I went to go to trunk. Okay, we'll go to the 11 branch just to look at it in a couple different places. So there's the merge that's in site info when you copy from site to site. And so I think a lot of people are probably familiar with that merge because that's where you can bring over all of the content from another site. So if you're going to be importing this way, you have the option to merge your data. But within announcements, there's a merge here as well. And within, let's see, I guess calendar, there's also a merge. So merge is used in a lot of different places. I don't know if there's any way to make the relationship more clear. Some other terminology than merge. But Adam's point is very valid. There is also a subscribe option in calendar. So. Okay, I see a few things in the chat. Dave is asking, can we use combine? Sean is suggesting link. Link to calendar or link to announcements. Adam likes combine. Anybody else? Linkify. Let's just make up words. All right. Let's see.
So I think one of the tricky things, at least with announcements, I'm not sure with calendars, when you do this merge, some of the announcements will be editable in that site and some won't. Is that right? Because when you bring in announcements from another course site, they look, at least from the UI, I think they look like they're coming from that site. You just can't edit them. So I think
Exactly.
that's sort of a complication there.
Yeah. So that was the because if someone doesn't really know, like say you have a couple of designers in a site and one person merged them and the other one didn't really realize how they got there, or maybe they did it a long time ago and don't remember that they merged rather than copy, they might be a little edit. I wonder if maybe there could be some sort of message to the end user or to the course designer saying merged from and then the name of the site, so that it's clear that those are coming from another originating area rather than changing the terminology. Yeah, because Jolie is mentioning in the chat that combine could potentially have the same problem as merge. And Sean was asking about a visual notification between the two different announcements, because I think that's the where the confusion is, right? I don't know, Jennifer or maybe Laura, if you guys were on the original call where this was discussed in QA.
I may have been. I'm really fuzzy on this.
I don't think Matt is on the call. Yeah, he was the one that opened the ticket.
I think the behavior that that really makes a difference here is that if you made a change in the target site, you wouldn't be changing announcements, any of those merged announcements, correct?
Well, it doesn't allow you to make the changes, I believe, the issue, if I'm understanding it correctly. Like when you copy them or when you merge them in, if you are merging from another announcements tool in another course, the edit button is not there. You can't actually try to make a change because it doesn't allow you to.
So you need to make edits in the site that came from?
Exactly.
So it is behaving quite a bit like Subscribe.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably where this subscription idea came from, is to make it more apparent why you can't edit. But if there were some other way, rather than changing the terminology, since we might get into some trouble with subscribe and merge the way it's used elsewhere.
Well, where else is Subscribe used?
Well, subscribe is used in the calendar. When you subscribe to the calendar, you can publish a URL and subscribe to it that way. So that would be an issue in the calendar tool if we changed it elsewhere and then the merge meant something else for calendar versus other tools. There's a lot going on in the chat. Let me try to read some of this off so that we get it for the recording. Okay, so let's see. Dave says, do you provide another feedback note in the site info merge area that categorizes what it means merge versus combine? In site info, it does actually, when you import from site, it does give you an idea of what those mean. But this merge is a little bit different. This merge just means, do you want to add it to what's in the destination site versus replacing everything, overwriting what's in the destination site. So it's used slightly differently in this context. Let's see. Luis is suggesting associate, which is similar to combine. But Jolie thinks that Sean's heading in the right direction with user feedback and a clarification to the user. So what we might want to do is document what it means in that context. And let's see. Jolie is suggesting, what if we used add with user feedback about how it really works? Jolie, could you explain what you mean by that? I'm not following.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't have my regular headset today. I guess what I was suggesting is that under add, I know we already have an add button, but maybe there could be an option there for bringing in announcements from another site with a clarification that they won't be editable, right? And then when those announcements show, the visual indicator that Sean was suggesting could be that like reminder that that's from another site and that, oh, I can't edit that, right? So you don't get confused. If you see them all together, you might not remember what site they're from, right?
Right.
So I think, you know, the add, just including that under add is a possibility. I'm just getting rid of the merge button altogether. But also creating that visual indication that this announcement is from another place. It doesn't have to be anything significant, but just so like when you view that, you know, oh, that's from the other site. I can't just click on that and edit it here.
Right. Yeah. This
Additionally,
user doesn't
Jolie,
actually. I'll do my navigating in another window. Go ahead, Laura.
yeah, additionally, that idea comes in with a visual indicator that if you can't edit it here, you can edit it in the originating site because it is more or less associated. I kind of like Louisa's word, associated with another site. So visually, the announcements would have to be in different groups depending on what the originating site of the announcement is. So you would know where to go back and edit it if you needed to. Jennifer asks if you have two courses and want to send the same announcement. That's the kind of impression I'm getting, is that there's maybe a group of instructors teaching the same course and they use the same set of announcements. Is that the use case we're looking at here?
Yeah, I'm looking at it on Try Sakai. And I believe what it does is it does act in a sense like a subscription, because it's not just copying one announcement, it's copying all of the announcements from the originating site, so that if any new announcements are added later, those will also display.
Well, that is a subscription, isn't it? Subscribing to the originating site.
Yeah, so I pulled up Try Sakai announcements just so we can see what the interface looks like. Oops. Okay, so when you go into, because I didn't have more than one course on Trunk. So when you go into the announcements, you've got the add interface for this site. But then when you go to merge, it's actually asking you to pick one or more than one other sites that you are an instructor in, to sort of copy or display, I suppose would be a better way to display any announcements that appear in those. So if I choose this, it's going to display all of the announcements from that site in this one. But I'm looking to see, I don't know if I actually have any items in that. Okay, that's from this one. Okay, so here's some stuff that's coming from that other site that I just selected, and you'll notice that there's no edit on those. They show up, they're all draft, but I can't do anything with them because they're all coming from that other course. Now it does show which site they're coming from. So maybe you've already got that information. Maybe there could be something added explaining why there's no edit, meaning that you have to go to the other site to edit them. Some sort of indicator for the end user.
Is it a given that the instructor of this site would also have access to the other site?
Well, you can only select something to merge if you have instructor access in both.
Good point.
But if there are multiple instructors, then maybe not. So if there's, you know, 2 faculty attached to a course and one faculty merged it from another of his or her sites, and then the other person comes in and wants to edit that, but they don't have access to the same set of courses that the original instructor did, then they might not both have access to the originating site.
Ooh, I like Jolie's idea.
Okay, what's this? Julie, this is a lot more work, but what if those were simply links to the announcement in the other site? But it could be a permission issue, David mentions. Now Wilma's talking about the caveat to that. Yeah, if you don't have access. Yeah, I mean, ideally it would be nice to just link over to the other course, and maybe if you don't have access, it just says you don't have access to this course. Somebody had to merge it originally, so if it needs to be unmerged, somebody would have to be able to do that at some point. At the very minimum, an admin user could get in there and unmerge it if, you know, somebody merged something and then was no longer available to edit or unmerge. All right, so Adam mentions, the more I see this, the more it does seem like a subscribe is the more appropriate verb, like an RSS feed or a podcast. Dave says, subscribe, can you then unsubscribe? And Julie's asking, but is that the real problem? Many people want to be able to edit. Yeah, I would agree with that, Julie. I think that the reason it's an issue isn't so much that they're displaying it, it's that the instructor wants to edit the item and can't, and doesn't understand why they can't, because they're looking in the wrong place. At least that's my instinct. And there's not currently an unmerge button. Adam, in order to unmerge something, you have to go back to the merge, see the list here, and select the link. So potentially, if someone else merged it and you didn't have access to the originating site, if you went in here to merge, you wouldn't see anything selected because it wouldn't show in your list of courses. So, so that could be, you know, the dilemma. The person is looking to unmerge it and can't even do that because they don't have access to the course. Let's see. So Kyle is mentioning perhaps if we link to the original announcement, some sort of smart permissioning would be needed, similar to when you send a link to a Google Doc in Gmail. You get a pop-up notifying you that recipients won't have access. And do you want to give them permission? Some sort of light box that would allow you, with one check, to make the merged announcements public. That sounds pretty cool, but I don't know how you would do that. Maybe somebody with more technical expertise could weigh in.
Well, let's talk about what happens if these announcements have been merged to multiple sites in the idea of a master site or a lead instructor or lead designer, and then the other sections of it have these merged announcements.
Mm.
It's intentionally done to give one person the ability in one site to edit announcements, make announcements, create new ones, get rid of old ones and have complete control over them as they appear in these other sites, to which the person in the originating site may not even have access.
Right. So let's think of a use case for this. So let's say there's a departmental announcement site that has departmental announcements for everyone in the department, and individual instructors are added to that departmental site so that they can kind of subscribe to the departmental announcements in their individual courses. But the main lead instructor that's posting to the departmental site does not actually have access to all of those individual courses. So they're just posting things in one place, and people are kind of picking them up there because they have subscribed to it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so in terms of what problem are we trying to solve here, I think we're trying to solve the problem of being unaware of how this works rather than change how it works. We're trying to increase awareness that this is in fact what's happening. So merge is not the correct verb. Maybe subscribe is, but then there's still a lack, as Sean indicated, of some other kind of visual indicator of why you can't edit that here.
Yeah, I'm thinking something where the edit normally appears underneath the title of the announcement. Maybe a similar, it doesn't even have to be a link, but maybe just a little notice under there saying you must edit in the originating site, or something more concise. But something similar to, like, in lessons where when you have something that's got a prerequisite, it just has prerequisite in parentheses. So it's just kind of a little alert to let you know that something different is going on here. That's why there's no edit.
Sean likes that. Anybody else?
Yeah, that's a good one, Sean. We need a non-link saying edit in original site. I like that. Dave likes that. So does Jennifer. Okay, cool.
Bye, Jennifer.
Bye, Jennifer. Julie, Jeff. All right. So seems to be general consensus. Everybody likes that. What I'll do is I'll add a comment to that JIRA with the kind of what we discussed here with maybe putting just a link saying edit an original site under the announcement rather than changing the terminology at this point. So, and hopefully that'll be an easier thing to accomplish. We'll see. All right, cool. Well, thank you. That was a lively discussion. All right, so we do have the second item on our agenda here is the NYU Skin for 12. They've been doing a lot of great work on this. And Kyle mentioned that they would have they wanted some feedback on some items here. Scrolling to the left in the tool menu, momentum scrolling in the Sakai header, and cleaning up or simplifying the default CK editor. So Kyle or Jeff, would you like me to give you the screen share? Is there anything that you guys want to show on the screen?
Yeah, that would be great. If you could give me screen share, that would be excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see if I can actually get that going here.
And thanks whoever updated the notes there. Appreciate it.
Sorry, 1 second. I'm trying to see if this will get going here.
Yeah, I know. It's always a little tricky.
And I always forget it's changed. Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, it's going to download a file that you then have to click on to run.
Okay. Okay. Am I showing my desktop now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, as you've probably seen in Trunk, we're in the process of merging in some of the skin updates for Sakai 12, and we're making some great progress there. But there are a couple of sort of UX questions that we had that we wanted to sort of bring up with the group today. So the first of which just has to do with the left tool menu. So specifically, one of the things that we've been noticing in Trunk recently is that the left tool menu sort of floats on the screen. It's like animated, it sort of scrolls along with you at a delay. And I wanted to get folks' feedback on this because my impression of this is that it's sort of distracting, and it sort of has some problems when it comes to UX, especially if you have a lot of tools in your site. So this, I think, was originally added as a feature with the old Sakai skin, with the 11 skin, and it was the only part of the interface at that point that I think was fixed on the screen and would sort of scroll along with you. But now we have a fixed header, which I think is really nice and kind of consistent with a lot of modern web apps, as well as a fixed collapse button in the lower left. So you'll see as I sort of scroll here, those will stay in place, but then we've also got this left tool menu that scrolls with you too. So my impression that this is that this is sort of unnecessary. That you have too many elements on the screen now that are sort of all staying in place as you scroll along, and especially with this second favorites row line not being fixed to provide more vertical real estate, it gets a little bit muddled. And one of the things that I noticed in particular is that if you have a lot of tools in your site, so let's say, for example, let me shrink this down here. Here, I have more tools that are sort of extending out of the frame. As I scroll, nope, it's not going to do it right now. But what I have been noticing is that it'll actually sometimes scroll so that I cannot access some of the tools that are out of frame here. And of course, it is not happening now. Interesting.
Cal, I wonder if you could go to a page that has like a little more on it, like maybe something really long.
Yeah, let's try that. Well, that doesn't have too much in it. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. So you'll notice that like the help button, for example, as I scroll here, is always outside of frame. I can never get to it because it'll scroll outside of the frame.
Yeah, I myself am finding that a little distracting. It
Yeah, I
kind of
also
keeps popping around all over the place. It's like you want to click on something and then it moves on you.
Right. The delay is also kind of problematic. I feel like I'm being stalked as I kind of move through the page a little bit. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not sure what others think, here, but I think having just a fixed left menu makes a lot more sense. That you've got a sort of header at the top of the screen that's always in place, have this collapse button that's always in place, and then the rest of the content on the page just sort of, scrolls relative to itself.
So is it just the blue bar up there with Sakai sites and the bullhorn and stuff? Is that the only part that's fixed at the
The other
top?
part that's fixed is the at the top, yeah. And the other thing that would be fixed is this collapse button at the bottom of the screen here, so
Okay.
that you can always sort of click this to be able to collapse the left menu down.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Well, for my part, I agree with you, Kyle. I think it's distracting to have it also. There's too much movement going on when it's trying to adjust. So I think just having the top bar fixed and the bottom collapse fixed would be sufficient. Oh, there has been some, sorry, I had my screen share over the top of it. There has been a little bit of discussion going on in the chat. Jolie says make it fixed, the menu that is. Martin agrees, the fixed tool menu is better. Seemed like a nifty idea at the time, but not so much in implementation. Dave wanted it to be collapsed at the bottom. Sean, what about a similar left panel to see what in websites such as Slack and Confluence? Let me go to that link and see what that looks like. Oh, you mean kind of maintain the navigation on the side with its own scroll bar? Is that what you're talking about, Sean?
Yeah, just as an option.
Yeah, I think the only problem with that is that you do have elements above it that scroll out of frame, so it's not always purely fixed in position. It's not like this entire, quadrant of the screen is sort of static. It's that only the left tool menu right now is sort of having this scroll animation. I think that especially as you have, right, so as you have stuff that extends past the screen, maybe it would make sense to have a scroll bar in here. But I think that people also kind of get a sense that, there's a sense of place on the screen here with everything below the header being positioned relative to each other, and that you can always scroll back up to the top to get to the first tool. I don't know, I find that, having all these different elements sort of scrolling separately or being fixed separately kind of interferes with your sense of place on the page.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to go against having a separate scroll, just because more scroll bars seems like it might look a little messier on the screen. I kind of like the clean lines of this, and when you get that long menu, to have a scroll bar there might be a little disruptive. Let's see. Laura likes the collapse at the bottom. Let's see. Top fixed header is great. Adam agrees. Dave mentions, by the way, on iOS mobile, you can double tap the top and it'll auto scroll to the top. Oh, that's good to know. Adam says fixed, 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 or actually fixed, fixed, fixed. I added past tense on that. Dave is with Adam. How would double scroll bars behave on a mobile? Yeah, that might be a little tricky on a mobile. Jolie agrees, +1 from Jeff. So it seems like most people prefer the fixed left tool menu. Is that an accurate summation, or does anybody want to make a case against that? Sean says fixed is a bad term. Okay. Do you have a better one? Technically static. Okay, static sounds better, I think. So a static left tool menu.
Cool. Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think that'll help sort of clean up the interactions on this page a lot. So cool. Right. So one of the other things that we were sort of looking at recently. So I saw something come up in Jira over the course of the past few weeks, and it has to do with, I think, the white space that sort of appears above the header here when you have sort of momentum scrolling, which is at least in the case on Mac. I'm not sure if it's also the case on Windows, but there's this Jira 32366 that was referencing it. So if you're scrolling around quickly, you get this sort of white space that pops in and out at the top of the header. And I can try and replicate it. I'm not sure if screen share is going to actually capture it, but it's a little problematic. It's you get this flash of white at the top of the screen. I'm not sure if you can see this here. I'm not sure if that's coming through at all, but yeah, you can sort of pull down and you see this white space come up. So I think
Visible.
there's something, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some things that we could do to try and, I think, sort of clean that up a little bit. There are, various ways you can do it. You could either have this top fixed header possibly be like exempt from the momentum scrolling. So, everything else on the page would continue to sort of have this momentum scrolling, but this would remain in place at the top of the screen. Or sometimes what you see in other applications to sort of make this space that shows up less prominent is that they make it sort of a shade of gray, and they provide some sort of differentiation between the top header and that empty space. So, for example, like Facebook, if I pull down here, they have a very subtle sort of off-white shade, and they put a little border on the top of this fixed header just to make it less obtrusive when I'm doing this pull action on the top of the header. So I think there are a couple of options, but I do think that this feels a little bit distracting, especially when you've got sort of a darker header, which is a lot of times necessary to maintain accessibility, when you have icons in the top of the header here. So,
Would
I wanted to get
possible to match it to the color of the banner at the top?
That's another option too. Yeah, absolutely. To just have this also be in the same shade of blue or whatever institutions have as their top header color.
Dave says same color would make it seem stretchy. Is
Yeah,
that a good thing
possibly.
or a bad thing? I kind of like it being stretchy. I think it's less distracting, but it depends on the purpose for it. If you want it to be, seen as a, something that's different.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it absolutely depends. I'm pretty impartial as to what approach would be best. I just think that to make this a little easier on the eye, especially when you pull down here, that we might want to consider doing something to sort of make that transition a little easier.
Dave mentions keeping it unmomentumed would make it feel more solid. I don't know if you want to comment more on that, or so you're interacting with the content rather than the header. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much work it would take to make that happen. But I think that would be nice, especially considering then no matter where you're scrolled on the page, the header is just always fixed at the top of the screen.
Yeah, Dave is mentioning that the fixed header gives a sense of place, something that doesn't move that you can count on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's why I liked it being stretchy, because it seemed like it if it's all the same color, it's like it's not really moving, it's just getting a little bigger. But the movement disappears more if you can't see it. But fixed would work for me too. But I do agree that I think the white is a little jarring in contrast. So either way, but if it could be made less jarring, I think that would be a good thing.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts on it?
Jolie likes fixed header. Dave wants to see some wireframes, like you're pulling back the front end of Sakai. Hee hee. Adam likes the fixed header. I missed that comment a little further up. And in this case, it would be fixed, not static, correct?
Okay, yeah, I think that's the term.
And Laura likes the fixed header too.
Okay, cool. Well, that's great feedback. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not sure what this would entail. We can sort of create a community JIRA for this as part of the sort of overall, skin effort, and that's something that either we or someone else could look into. But I think that would be a really nice thing to have, because right now, and it's partially just because I'm using an incognito window here, but the white sort of popping in is a little obtrusive. So that's great. Cool. And the last thing that we just wanted to talk about has to do, and this is something I think that's come up in a couple of different calls. I think it might have come up in a call last week. I'm not sure if it was the core team call or not, but it has to do with the default CK editor in Sakai. So right now, there are quite a few options in the CK editor, and there's sort of also the way they're currently organized. One thing that would be really nice would be able to sort of better organize these different options and sort of group them together where it makes sense logically, but also perhaps simplifying these different options. I'm not sure if there are options here that are absolutely necessary for the default skin. Things like, for example, these blocks on the page, or anchors, things like that might not be necessarily used all that often. So we wanted to sort of raise this as a discussion point because, I think that making this default CK editor simpler and with less options is a good way to go, especially for accessibility purposes, because screen readers have to, with CK editor, sort of cycle through all these different options before you can get to the content. So yeah, Jeff, I don't know if you want to speak to that more, or.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we looked across a lot of different products, different learning management systems, and others, I mean, it's an overwhelming number of options, and we've talked about this trade-off between options and ease of use. Clean user experience. So yeah, I think when there's always going to be some subset of the population that's going to say, oh, well, I need this, very specific plugin. But the trade-off is that for all those students, for all those faculty members who don't use it, you've just given them more visual clutter. And so it's really striking that balance. And so there's some of them that we, that we sort of reorganized and pared some of them down in our instance. And so I think that's what we wanted to discuss a bit.
I thought there was a way to show fewer menu items. I see that on the CK Editor website. If you go there, you don't see all these. Can't we just change the default and then let universities choose if they want to show more or what their defaults are?
You definitely can customize. So I think it's pretty easy for a university to sort of decide what they want shown and what they don't want shown from a configuration standpoint. But are you thinking more from the end user to be able to say, here's an expandable, like Martin is saying, there would be a more button to provide access to more buttons. Is that what you're saying, Jolie, along the lines?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I think if you go to the CK Editor site, on all their screenshots of their product, they do not have a bazillion icons. It's a collapsed menu. So I think this is possible. Out of the box, we could have this sort of subset, and then let people configure from there. But I think this is part of the product. Maybe we don't have it set that way. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's definitely configurable. I mean, it's definitely configurable for an institution. In fact, I believe Mark or Peyton said that there are some of these that are sort of hidden out of the box. So Sean is saying it's configurable in ckeditor.launch.js. So yeah, so I mean, I think, you know, what we present as Sakai, you know, from the community, I think having something more pared down and then institutions can add those back in might be a good approach.
Yeah, because I don't believe that CK Editor has something that's sort of expandable on the fly. I think that the options that are sort of in the editor have to be, as was mentioned just a minute ago, have to be sort of defined in the file itself, and then that gets loaded on the page. I don't think there's a way to have a more button or not, at least not right now in CK Editor.
Yeah, yeah, and the that toggling, I mean, that's an interesting thing too, because if you take the standpoint, let's say that there's some math plugin that is not very basic, but if you're a math instructor and you use it all the time, and every time you go to the CK editor, you have to hit a button to expand it, it could drive you a little crazy. So yeah, it's you know, they're definitely, yeah, exactly, Sean, and user preference. So I mean, in an ideal world, you know, as Kyle and I were chatting through this, it'd be great if as a user you could say, like, you know, if I sort of open this in one CK editor to always show, you know, if it would be possible for us to have something like this. Like Kyle said, I'm not sure, you know, that there's something out there readily in the community. It's the CK editor community. But if on a user by user level, you could say, okay, I'm expanding this, and next time I come to it, it's going to be expanded. That would be cool. But if it's the kind of thing where, okay, every time I use the CK editor, I need this plugin, and now you're making me do an extra click to get to the full view, then that could also be a little bit rough. So yeah, it's a question of, can we get to that sort of ideal state? Sakai's is a lot smaller than other LMSs. I think the one in Canvas is pretty minimal. I'm not sure about Blackboard. Yeah, in terms of user preference, I mean, I think what, you know, to make it streamlined, you know, if we were ever able to get to that point, it would be, I think it'd be nice if it's the kind of thing that, you know, it would maybe store somewhere, you know, okay, you've opened it to the full, you know, to show all the buttons, and then it's kind of set like that for that user's other editors. Maybe it's even a cookie or something, because it wouldn't be so bad to sort of do it during a user session. But yeah, I think those are things that would need to be explored. So maybe there's a phased approach here where we say, yeah, we agree that out of the box, maybe we pare down those options, and then, you know, second phase, you know, ideally if we could get to a point where you could sort of have a more minimized view, and then it be driven on, you know, the user opening it and kind of staying in that state for the rest of their session or even longer, then that would be nice too. So for the short term, do we think that we want to pare this down a bit out of the box? It does pare down on mobile automatically. That's true, but you can't expand it. In fact, I think, Kyle, if you pull down to mobile and refresh, I think it'll pop into that minimized view.
Sure, let's try that. Yep.
Yeah. And institutions can, and you can actually configure this too. So I think there's some setting where you say, okay, these are the plugins that I want to see in the mobile view. Cool. So it sounds like, you know, good feedback on pared down out of the box.
Yeah, that's a good point, Martin, that we'll need to decide which icons kind of make the cut. But I think it looks like the majority of the group is in favor of a more streamlined out-of-the-box configuration. And then obviously each institution can decide for themselves, you know, which icons they want in there.
Yeah, Jolie, thank you very much for sending the screenshot of what Canvas is. Yeah, as we can see here, it's definitely more straightforward. It's basically just, you know, the most basic forms of rich text editor content. Cool. Great.
Well, thank you, Jeff and Kyle. That was very useful, I think. So we have a few takeaways from that. And I don't think we've only got about 4 minutes left. So I don't think we're actually going to have time to get to the site info topic. That was something that recently came up on the user list, just talking about the site info page and some different ideas for possibly presenting the information either in a more condensed format where it could be expanded, collapsed, or possibly even splitting it out into 2 different tools, student facing, instructors facing. But I think that that's more than we can possibly get to in 3 minutes. So I'm going to save that for next month, and we'll return to that in May. And also, if there's any other items that you guys would like to add to the agenda for May, I'd be happy to add those. So please send them as you get the ideas. Or if anything comes up, you know, between now and then that seems like it might be a good topic, please let me know. So any final thoughts from anybody before we wrap up the meeting today? Nope. Okay, great. Well, thanks again for everyone attending today. And I think we did some good work there, getting some action items regarding some of those UX issues. And hopefully I will see you guys, or talk to you at least next month for our next meeting, which will be on May 1st, I believe. Yep, May 1st, same time. So thanks, everybody.